But I love this message for Dane Espegard. You can't just flip a switch. Let's bring him up.
Blood stains the Coliseum doors. Lies on the lips of a priest. Thanksgiving disguised as a feast. Rolling in the Rolls Royce.
Just to correct it, I'm not over to $1 million yet. I'm not like Evan or Drew or Justin, but you want to clear that up? All right, there's a lot of messages at this event. I feel that this event has been fantastic. I feel like the message selection has been fantastic. And I also feel it can be overwhelming in an SLC. And somebody asked me yesterday, how many have you been to? I said 9 SLCs. And I got me thinking, what was most memorable or which messages stood out. And the fact is, these events, there are so many topics that are out there that you could pick and choose from. And I want to stress to you that if you were to choose even just one topic or one message to listen to over and over and over again, you'll probably experience a 20 to 50% increase in your business. I'm not saying that this is that message. I think for a lot of people, it's the recruiting messages. 100% the recruiting messages are going to drive what most of you need right now. I'm here to talk to you on push periods and not being able to flip the switch and go from 0 to hero in a large push period. And one of the big keys is having a large team. So a push period is not as exciting as, I don't remember, I think it was Trey talking about showing up to your key staff meeting of 1 and your alliance meeting of 1. And so, all of the things that you have heard today and yesterday on recruiting, they're going to hold true. And that's the opportunity to double down with a message like this when your recruiting is really going after it. This message, I also want to make sure that you understand that this isn't a message that you just listen to before SC2 next summer. There's a lot of stuff in here that will be SC2 specific, but it is not an SC2 message. When I went through and I was going through the messages or the push periods, of the calendar, there's 8 push periods that account for 17 weeks, which is 32% of our year. So a third of our year is technically a push period. Have you ever had a rep say, man, one of these things end, it's like when this one's over, another one happens? Right? I'm like, that means that we're a good sales company. We're a great sales company because there's always something to get you going again. But a third of your year is a push period. This is not an SC2 message. And the whole you can't just flip a switch, the point of that title is you can't listen to this before SC2 and then pop a big push period. You can't increase your push 50% when you just do it one time. This is just like anything else. It's a skill. It's like recruiting. It's like training. It's like anything else. You have to be focused on it to continue to increase your skill development to be able to get the result that you want to. I love push periods. I feel like it's one of the glamour periods in our business. I've loved it since I was a pilot sales manager to a new DM to even today. I love push periods. And there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that's exciting. There's the alliance, there's the phone jams, there's the alliance meetings, and then there's obviously the conference. But when I can think back to, and I said this last year, when I talked about last year, and that was my largest year in Vector. It was my best year in Vector, and $2 million was the quest that we had set out. But the most memorable moment last year was not hitting $2 million, it was our SC2. It was the relationships, the barriers that people broke through, myself included, in celebrating at the event with all of our top leaders. So this was a picture from our last year. By the way, those are all 1 fingers. There's a couple that I questioned exactly what they were throwing up. But this was the majority of our alliance from this last year. And again, when I think of a summer, I go to my SC2 team. And why I think that this talk has relevancy is not just because push periods make up 32% of our year, but because that's where we really get our development, I feel. The way I look at my business is throughout the summer, I have a whole bunch of maybe development happening in my office, and SC2 is when I get my hands on them, and my grip is so tight that they're there for the next year, or 2 years, or 3 years and beyond. I got a text this morning from somebody who was on my 10K Alliance in 2007, that said, hey, heard everybody's getting BMWs. This guy, by the way, has not been in our business since 2009, right? We still keep in touch. He's going to be at our wedding. And, these people, he's gone on to do some great things. It's like that's where we get our development. That's where the relationships are built, is through SC2, SC1, Conference of Champions, SLC push, if you choose to take advantage of those. I also added up some numbers. I'm a numbers guy, and I feel like that's really allowed me to notice what areas of my business, whether it's a push period or something else, what do I need to do? What do I need to tweak to get from this to the next level? I added up in 2013, of our $2 million in sales, $821,000 was sold during push periods. It's a lot of business. This year, we've increased $94,000. We're at $915,000 for push period CPO for the year. It hasn't always been extremely large. I'm going to share some other numbers with you in a little bit. SC2 2012, I shared this at the table with a few people last evening. SC2, so listen to these numbers. We did $120,000 for SC2 in 2012. In 2013, we did $301,000. So there's some things that we did differently, right? I got a little bit better at certain things. A lot of it was the preparation, which I'm going to talk about. And then this last year, we grew from 301 to 335. And next year, I believe we'll be up over 350 and hopefully sometime be able to take down Mike Muriel's record for SC2. But the way I look at every other push period is those are opportunities for me to practice my push period program, because it is a program. It's not just something that comes around once a year. It's a program that we do regularly throughout the year. Here are the push periods that I've identified. Some regions might have more, but I've got on here SC1, SC2, Conference of Champions, whatever you call that, SLC, January incentive trip, the first 2 weeks of the year. I know a lot of regions do that. Year-end banquet, summer prep, and RDC. I thought it was pretty cool when looking at, as a manager being here, what you should be looking at is how can I leave this looking and saying, yeah, I could confidently see at least $100,000 in growth next year. Now, some of you, that might not fire you up. You might be at $300,000 and say $400,000 doesn't really get me out of bed. But the fact is, that's a lot of growth for any business. If you're at $1 million this year, looking to close out at $1 million, hey, is $100,000 noteworthy in growth? Yeah, I believe so. The overrides would say so. 8 push periods, if you were to grow $12,500 a piece, that's a $100,000 increase. For some of you, you're in the place where you could actually increase $200,000 to $300,000 in 1 year in your push period business, I believe. Here's what I've learned matters most to the push period program. Preparation matters. The alliance, the manager's mindset, and exiting the push period the right way. I'll share some numbers with you on that one a little bit. What I believe happens during push periods, it's when your representatives are challenged the most, hopefully because you're the one that challenged them the most. So what happens during that time is they were challenged, they overcame an obstacle, they earned larger paychecks than they've probably earned at any other time throughout the job. They saw themselves grow, and they were attracted to what's attracted you in this business. And they got to see, I think during a push period is when a representative gets to see a little bit into the window of what attracted all of us to this business. That's where I've gotten my FSMs and CSPs. It's definitely where I've got my assistant managers, branch managers, pilots, and DMs. It's very rare for me to not have somebody come from an alliance at some push into the development pool. We're going to talk about preparation first. If you want to label in your notes, I'd really say it breaks down to 2 parts to keep it really simple. It's preparation and execution. There's the pre, right? And then there's the during, while it's all happening. But I do feel like at this point, if you prepare to all the stuff that I'm going to talk about, I feel like I could show up at day 1 of my push period and I can expect with a certain level of confidence and know exactly where my sales report is going to end. It's a pretty cool feeling showing up on day 1 saying, I feel really confident that we're going to do over $300,000 for this push period. Right? Why? Is because we did a lot of things leading up to it to make sure that we were in the right situation. So, here's something for you. 4 weeks out, I'm going to give you a little timeline. 4 weeks out, you want to begin talking about all the events and the importance and relevance of the push period, of whatever that push period is. And if you need help, you should all have a little stump speech about your push periods. But how is that push period relevant to that person? So it should be in your PowerPoints or keynotes for your weekly team meetings. It should be in your PCs. It should be on your wall that has all the upcoming events. And the upcoming events wall, by the way, it doesn't just have the push period starts here. It has all the other stuff I'm going to talk about as well. It has all the dates leading up to it. If it's a big deal, the start day isn't actually as important as the rest of the stuff. Think about the large things that have happened to you in your life, and it's not that one day, it's the lead up to it. So 4 weeks out, you need to start talking about it. The chatter needs to be happening, and it starts with you, to the intensity that you have it. 3 weeks out, you begin signing people up for the phone jam, leading into the push. So what I mean by that is, I think in most regions, push periods start typically on Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in there. So that Sunday leading up to it is where a lot of the business is created. I'm going to talk about the all-day phone jam in a little bit. But 3 weeks out, I'm already signing people up. I'm asking people, hey, Mitch, what do you got going on September 14th. That's what it was this year for SLC. Right? So it's like, Mitch, what do you got? This is in August, by the way. What do you got going on September 14th? What do most students say? I don't really know. Sweet, I know. We got an all-day phone jam. I need you to mark it down. Right? And they're like, even if they don't mark it down, I'm going to say that to them over and over, so they're going to hear there's going to be significance tied to September 14th. He might not remember what it is until he talks to me again. I'm like, Sunday, remember? Oh yeah, Sunday. There's no option of them not showing up. We'll talk about that in a little bit. 2 weeks out, you're going to run an alliance info meeting and collect signups. I think that you need to do this at all push periods. An alliance info meeting. So what is it? It's an info meeting to recruit people onto your alliance. There's some people that I know are going to be in the alliance. I still want them to be there because bodies there makes a difference. And I also, at that meeting is where I'm going to lay out for them, here's all the expectations. And the clearer I am with that, the easier it is for me on the execution portion to hold them accountable to what they said, or what I said was going to be expected of somebody in the alliance. So that info meeting is really important. There's an agenda in the box, the drop box. There's going to be an agenda for that meeting that you can find in there. So I'm not going to talk any more about that. You can look at it. It's pretty self-explanatory. I would add on some extra stuff. The more push period stories that you have, the better. Right? They don't need to be your stories. When I was a newer DM, they weren't my stories. They were Mike Muriel, Justin Donald, Greg Strine's stories. And I actually still use a lot of their stories because I forget to document my stories. Right? And those ones are like archived back from the 80s when these guys were ripping it up. 2 to 8 days out. Everyone gets PC'd. If somebody is on my alliance, they have to get PC'd. I need to know with certainty that I have written in every event into their schedule. I'm not expecting that they took it off the wall and wrote it in their notes. That's like the 5%ers. So I'm going to actually write in. It's like, all right, we're going to make your schedule. That's what you do in the PC. You just make their schedule. I make it. So I have the sheets, and I ask them what's going on in this, and I write them in. And then I put all the stars, and then we talk about goals, and we break it down. We use decent numbers. And I think one of the important things from that PC is everybody gets what's called a magic number. Okay? Write that down, magic number. I'll come back to that in a second. And then the last 1 to 5 days out. By the way, all these 1 to 5 days and 2 to 8 days out, I'm actually referring to that all-day phone jam. To me, that's when the push period begins. So again, if this is SLC push that we're referring to, on September 14th, I'm talking about 1 to 5 days out. I'm confirming, I want to make sure that I elaborate on that so you get this. I'm confirming every single person to that event every single day, and I'm asking them how many phone numbers do they have. That's the key part there. So I also tell them, hey, just so you know, Jason, one of the reasons that our office is awesome at push periods, which we are, it's because our all-day phone jam is really, really successful. It's one of the key ingredients. Why our all-day phone jam is really successful is because all of our representatives do the legwork ahead of time to make sure the phone jam goes really well for them. Hey, have you ever attended a phone jam with just 20 names and numbers? Right? And then you're like, well, I'm supposed to be here from 6 to 9, so then what do? You screw around, right? You make some calls, and the manager's like, why aren't you making more calls? And you're like, oh, I'm doing something, but really you're just avoiding calling those 20 people back again and again and again and again. So here's what's going to happen with the all-day phone jam. And I'm really thorough with them, and I give examples of this. I said the all-day phone jam is, it's a really awesome day, but it's also like the worst day ever. So you do the thing that you hate the most for the most amount of time throughout the year. And why it's awesome is because at the end of it, how would it feel if I told you you're going to have 20 demos booked or 30 demos? And our top people, they actually clear 40 appointments on that day. But I'll also tell you that you're required to come in with a certain amount of names and numbers, and I will help you come up with those lists all throughout the week leading up to it. And if you show up with 60, 70 numbers, you're supposed to have 200. If you show up with 60 or 70 phone numbers, I'm actually going to make you still make 20 to 25 calls an hour for the entire 9 hours. So let me walk you through what that's like. And I use the example this year of a guy named Wes Erickson who did this last year. I said, if you're on the Alliance, you got to follow through on the stuff that I say. Otherwise, you're messing up the recipe. So I use the example of Wes, and what's funny is Wes was in there for a lot of the meetings this year. I go, Wes, I'm going to use Wes as an example. Wes didn't do his homework, so he came in with between 60 to 70 numbers. And so what happened is he called about, let's just say 20 an hour. So the first 3 hours of the phone jam, he called everybody. Well, what happens when you call all of them? Some of them you get a hold of, some say yes, some say call me tomorrow. So you're taking some people off your list. So let's say after those first 3 hours, he's down to 40 names and numbers. He's already feeling awkward because you just called him a couple hours ago, and he needs to keep calling. Because if he doesn't keep calling, what am I going to do? I'm going to come over and say, Wes, what are you doing? Get back on the phone. And then he'll do it begrudgingly, right? And he'll make some more calls. And then it's going to take about 2 hours to get through those, and then he's going to be left not with 40, but with probably 30. And then what's going to happen, right? You guys get that. And so I walked them through it, and I'm like, and I told Wes this was going to happen. Wes, in the middle of his all-day phone jam, tried to leave. He said, I'm done. I said, well, hey, just so you know, and we talked outside. I said, just so you know, if you leave, you're not following through on your commitment, I can't have you be in the Alliance. Because it wouldn't be right to everybody else, and your experience wouldn't be what I've promised you it's going to be. So if you leave, just understand, you can't be upset with me because I was very clear-cut with this. You have to follow through on the stuff. So you're making a decision. I'm not going to hold a grudge on you, by the way, but I just want to make sure that you understand what the repercussions of that decision are going to be. So when you leave, if you leave, you still, by the way, we'd love to have you keep selling Cutco and be a part of it, and I think you got a bright future. But if you stay, I'll specifically sit and work with you on building a list that you didn't do before, but I'll still meet with you now and do it. I'll show you how you can still find more names and numbers, and you'll finish this out, and you'll be able to look yourself in the mirror and feel good about it. He cried, by the way. He turned back around. He went inside. I helped him. He came up with more names and numbers. He finished the phone jam, and Wes Erickson sold 10,000 pretty much on the dot for that SC2. It's the biggest growth experience that he's ever had. So he's like my shining trophy now at any other meeting. I'm like, Wes, how did it feel? And he's like, horrible. This year we didn't have as many people not come prepared. So the other thing I think is important on this, I just want to give you the shock value on this. The last 3-4 years at my all-day phone jam, for the largest push when we have the most people participating, which is SC2, we set up between 500 to 750 demos on one day. Let me say that one more time. 500 to 750 demos in one day of phoning. If you set up that many demos and you go into Monday, are you pretty confident in your push period? Yeah. I literally, at the end of that, that's Christmas to me is my all-day phone jam. At the end of that day, I feel really good about where our business is headed. And our reps feel fantastic because they just powered through the day. I make them expect this day to be so hellish that at the end of it, they're like, that wasn't that bad. Now, I've gotten to that point. When I was a newer manager, I didn't tell them enough how bad it was going to be, so I had a lot of difficult conversations. But every year, I've had less and less hard conversations because of how hard I was on them in the front end. So the preparation with them, for them to be able to create their names list come that all-day phone jam, that makes a difference. If I have somebody who's not going for big numbers, I'll tell them what their number of names needs to be. So for some people, it's like you need to have 100. That's your number. And then what I'm doing is we actually have a tracking document, Excel spreadsheet or Google Doc or whatever you want to use. And in there, when we talk to them those 5 days leading up to it, the conversation is, Mike, how many names do you have? You had 35 yesterday. Have you improved that number yet? And then he's like, yeah, I'm at 50. Awesome, you're at 50. Hey, what are you doing to get to the next 50 to get to 100? So these are our PDI calls leading up to it. So they're actively engaged in working. Do you think they care more about the push period when they did all the legwork to get the names and numbers? Right? Here's some alliance numbers from the last 2 years. And again, why I'm sharing SC2 data is because that's the one that I track the most. We had an alliance for SLC. And we had our best SLC that we've ever had. We grew by 11 grand, 55 grand, about 66 grand, somewhere in there, depending on how tabs were. 2013, this is for SC2. This does not include my CSPs or FSMs. I just want to make sure that's clear. Because I know sometimes when people look at numbers, they're like, oh, they got these CSPs. 22 alliance members in 2013. Average alliance report was 8,711. My alliance, those 22 people added up to do $191,000 for our push period. Our office report was 301. So when planning for the next year, I said, okay, cool. So I can probably expect to have 100,000 give or take from the team, some CSPs and that kind of stuff. And so what I need to be focused on is I'm recruiting my alliance members all summer. Literally in May. Mitch was my pilot last year in 2013, and we were constantly like, who are we looking at right now that could be on the alliance? So we have a running list all throughout, and then we get them on there. Because the way I'm looking at it is, this year I thought I would be able to increase that number. I wanted to have the average be at 10 grand. But the way I look at it is everyone that I convinced to be on that, because by the way, they're heavy sales pitches, I'm looking at a 9 grand sale. Right? This year it ended up being $7,900. But we had more people on the alliance, so we did $221,000, and we grew our business. So our growth this year was not from anything outside of our alliance. So those numbers excite me just looking at them. So let's talk about some of the execution. Oh, the alliance. I'm skipping over a lot in terms of like, what do you do in your alliance? Your alliance comes in every single morning. I'm not going to talk much about this. You need to run well-planned meetings in the morning to make sure that they keep coming back. Now, I have put in the box, the drop box, a sample 16-day push period with every single morning what you could cover for meetings. Okay? Now, on it, it has my name, Greg Strine's name, Justin Donald's, and Mike Muriel. A lot of the stuff is taken, fixed, moved, whatever. Okay, so I don't know where all the information came from originally, but that's what we've been using over the last couple of years. So I think that's you need to go through it again. And what should you do? The next push period that you have, the next one for us is January prep or January incentive trip. And so we're going to have an alliance. And we cover the same information, and they love it. They love hearing that. They look forward to it. The people that keep coming back for that information, they love that stuff. All right, manager mindset makes a really big difference. Write down thermometer or thermostat. Average managers are the thermometer of their business and the thermometer of their office and the thermometer of their people. Top managers, all-star managers are thermostats. I set the temperature in my office. Why I love the Alliance, why I love Champions Club, is because I get to infuse them with my energy and my optimism for the day. They show up at my Alliance meeting, they're 0 for 5. I'm high 5. So the Alliance, again, in the morning is where I could leave at 9 a.m. and my day is set. We're going to have a $20,000 day during SC2. It's pretty cool to do. I had 2 visitors come and watch, Jason Heinrichs and Chris Naku, during that time. And it was really cool to be able to run that meeting with them, and they got to see me infuse energy into my people and tell them, this is what's going to happen today for you. Right? You talk with so much certainty of this is what's going to happen. Hey, Nate, I know it didn't happen for you yesterday. That doesn't matter. I don't care what happened to you yesterday because it's yesterday. Evan right behind you, he could share his experience from you, and you guys are no different. There's no reason that you couldn't have had that yesterday. So you have 5 demos today. Fantastic. But you got 2 the rest of the week. That's a massive issue. All I care about is you build those demos up all day today. So I need to get a progress report from you regularly throughout the day to see where your demos are at for the rest of the week. We are so focused on demo creation. What happens on the demos, it's secondary. It's like, all right, cool, tell somebody else, who cares? When's your next demo and how many do you have tomorrow? And it's all about the magic number. Going back to that, the magic number of the PC is how many appointments they need to have set by day 1, morning 1 of the push period. And we drive this home. So I tell people based on how, again, it's kind of a feel situation. What's their goal? What's their availability? And also, what's their names list situation? How good are they at phoning? And I'll go through and be like, Mitch, your magic number is 25 appointments. And you have 25 appointments set up by Tuesday morning when the push starts. And then I got somebody over here who's going for 30 grand. It's like, Danny, I know you're going for $30,000, so your number needs to be Your number needs to be 40 appointments. You've got to work extra hard on that. But guys, when you get their schedule, when you give them their schedule, what you're doing is you're taking out the opportunity for them to make emotionally based decisions, which is always a losing situation. What I want is I want to be able to help them make the right decision regularly, and that's when they're focused on the activity. That's when I have their schedule and I can monitor it. We track things like crazy during push periods because I need to know if they're following through on what they're supposed to be doing or not. And then I get to hop in with crucial conversations. I love it. If you want to read a great book that's going to help you hold people accountable, read the book called Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. It's great. A lot of you do that stuff naturally anyways, but you'll read it and it gives you a system of how to do it. I think it's great. Your belief in them needs to be stronger than anything. Here's an example of how your belief should always win. I had a representative this summer, Eric Evers. Eric Evers came in. He had just finished a $10,000 fast start and then did like 4,000 and 4,000. And we were having a PC for the push period. What was ironic at this point, in the back of my office was Robert Wicks. Robert Wicks went on to do $30,000 for the push period. He was an assistant manager. Eric Evers is sitting at my desk while we're doing the PC. And Eric says to me, I want to do 15 grand. I said, love that. I'll support you in it. You'll get a trophy. You'll be one of the top people. But can I give you my honest opinion on what I think that you're capable of doing based on the schedule that you're showing me? And he said, sure. And I said, I think you should be doing $30,000. Now, I'm not going around putting that on people's shoulders that couldn't do it, just so you know. Right? This guy just sold a lot of Cutco. He's doing really well. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, if you don't feel comfortable with that, if that overwhelms you, we could do 15 grand, but we need to make an agreement right now. And that agreement is if you do $15,000 in week one, that you'll agree to me that you'll shoot for 30 grand. And they said, I could do that. I said, I think you could beat Bert. He looked around and they both kind of laughed. Bert was the AM that coached him. Like, would that be cool to beat your assistant manager? He's like, yeah, absolutely. He did 15,000 and some change week one, and he finished over $30,000 for the push. Right? That 18-year-old's life has changed, by the way. He went out and bought a $1,000 suit like a tool. I found out afterward. I was like, are you kidding me? Your goal selection also matters. I don't have much time to cover this. This is what I think matters with the goal selection. Whatever your goal is for the push, you dumb that down about 66 to 75% of what you believe your goal should be. That's the goal that you promote to your team. Why that matters is because I used to promote the goal that I wanted to do, but how often do you hit your push goal? So then what happens is halfway through the push, I stop promoting it. Right? And I'm like, you can finish, you can do it strong, and there's no rally cry for the office. So what I do now is I do about 66 to 75% of what my actual goal is, and that's what I throw out to the team. Then we're on pace. Oh, it's awesome, we're going to kill it, right? And it's easier for me to promote to everybody. I don't know if everyone's going to agree with that or not, but I've found a lot of success in that in the last couple of years. Last thing on there, exiting the right way. How you have to paint a picture. This right here is how I exited the last week of SC2 in 2009. We did 89,000 the last week of the push. The next week we reported we tabbed 4 grand. I had 8 people sell over 4 grand the week before. That's an office tab, by the way. So this is exiting the wrong way. And so now I'm constantly having conversations. The wheels are already moving for the push period, so now I'm talking about, hey, you're going to be building a lot of momentum. Have you thought about what you want to do after this? Well, they haven't, so I'm going to tell them what they're going to think about afterward. Hey, have you thought about K-Club? You're going to have some good momentum going. What about this? What about this? And so I'm planting some seeds about where they should be at. The 2 things I talked about, preparation, execution, they're going to increase your sales and your development for 32% of the year. A push period, your best push period does not have to be SC2. You can have your best push period at any time of the year. A representative, when you don't promote that, you don't get that. I just had a representative, this guy Preston, he told me it was okay to share his story. I'm going to end with this. Preston is an individual, started last May, sold 15 grand, and then he fell back into old habits being some drugs. To us, we thought he had a sleeping disorder. I kept telling him, you need to go to the doctor, you need to go to the doctor. You look like a zombie. The guy, when he started with us, worked at Papa John's. He had a 3-year-old child with somebody that he wasn't with. Not a good situation for him, especially because it looked like there were some issues underlying there. Well, he sold 5,000 for SC2 that year, and then he got in a car accident and he was on drugs, and he got put in jail for a certain period of time. He said, I'll be here at the end of the year for the $2 million party if we hit it. Sure enough, we didn't hear anything from him. Showed up to the party. He loved it. He's like, this is the best thing for me to be able to get what I need. Then what happened? He was in rehab for the spring campaign. He's like, I'll be back for summer. Showed up for summer, started doing well, fell back, right? I called him on some of his stuff, sold $7,000 for SC2, a little bit of improvement. This guy just got his license taken away from what he did a year ago after SC2. He got it back on September 13th. This guy was so fired up to get it back because he knew the push started on September 16th for SLC. And this guy finished at $10,200 for SLC. Right? This is a student representative, by the way. He's out of classes right now, but he is our normal recruit that has a lot of baggage. But that guy is getting what he needs from Vector. His life is getting changed. He will run a branch office next summer. And where he's getting that from is from Vector and nowhere else. And it came from us believing in him during a push period. Accept the challenge, build your push period muscle, and be ready to flex it by next year SC2. Thanks a lot, guys.